Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talking Pictures with Lance and David. Here we are again at the Curzon Soho, and we're here to talk about the adaptation of Jim Thompson's The Killer Inside Me, directed by Michael Winterbottom. So, we saw it a while ago, didn't we?
And I don't know about you, but there were a few walkouts at the screen. You remember there was a few walkouts at the screening, and because it's pretty tough material.
It is. So tell us about the basic plot of the film.
Well, Casey Affleck plays Lou, who's the sort of deputy marshal or marshal of a small Texas town. I mean, a real kind of tumbleweed town. And it's set, I guess, in the early 1950s, the same time it was written, 1952, or published. And he is basically, and the book is narrated as the film is by Lou in the first person. And although he's a lawman, he also happens to be a serial killer with a penchant for beating up women. Occasionally to death. Casey Affleck, who I thought was just amazing in Gone Baby Gone and the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. A really, really interesting actor to watch. Doesn't perhaps make enough films, or perhaps it's great that the ones that he does make really, really mean something. I mean, those two films came out very close together, I remember, and I was just absolutely dumbstruck by how great he was. He's got those little small serial killer teeth. You know, Hannibal Lecter was supposed to have too many small, tiny rows of tiny teeth. And Casey Affleck has that same thing going on. But the supporting cast is equally terrific. You have
Jessica
Alba, Kate Hudson,
who's terrific.
Ned Beatty.
Yeah. Bill Pullman has a small role.
Has a sort of small role. Yeah. And you know, you can see why the material attracted this great cast, and you can kind of see why. Why it would make a great subject for a film. Michael Winterbottom, who, let's talk about him a bit first. I mean, he really is, sort of one of the most, what's the word? I mean, as far as genres is concerned, he's so gregarious. He can. He can jump from genre to genre.
Makes different kinds of films, but
makes them fast and makes them.
He does the bigger crowd pleasers, and then goes back and makes a smaller, more personal film.
And he keeps them coming. I mean, it's sort of at the rate of.
He's got 2 on the go right now.
Yeah, the rate of kind of at least 1 a year. But this one seemed to be his most movie-ish movie.
It's very much a movie.
You were familiar with the book this time before you saw the film. I wasn't familiar with the book, but although I knew Jim Thompson from The Grifters and The Getaway. And then I went back and read the book afterwards, and suddenly the film made a lot more sense, in the sense that I thought, there are some plot, there seem to be some plot over-complications in some places, and there were a couple of bits where the plot didn't quite seem to follow. It just seemed to be, I was trying to piece things together, and I thought, well, why does he park his colour, and why does he let the tie down? And then when I read the book, I thought, actually, the film is completely faithful to the book in that it has exactly the same flaws as the book. In fact, when you say faithful, I would say slavish. And, I really did think that it was, as far as the dialogue was concerned, and the story from A to B, it was almost a transcript of the book. Now that's kind of interesting. There are a whole bunch of ways to adapt books, and even though Jim Thompson's story is written from Lou's point of view, and even though the characters are really, the lesser characters are really only sketches in the book, and of course in the film, a great actor is put into that part, Ned Beatty. Lifts the character way beyond because it was his character, Ned Beatty. He's kind of like the guy who runs the town, isn't he? He's not the elected mayor or whatever, but he's the guy who's put all the money into it.
In a Western, he'd be the robber baron.
Exactly. And in Chinatown,
Yeah.
Let's say he is the John Huston character. You know, he's the guy who basically, you know, is running things. And so he is above the law, you know.
Or he believes he's above the law.
Yeah, exactly.
That nothing can touch him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I felt that actually the film was an amazingly, careful and sort of true adaptation of the book for better or worse. I actually enjoyed the film much more because I thought, okay, what he hasn't tried to do is fix the flaws of the story. And there's something to be said for that actually the film hangs together perfectly well, don't get me wrong. But one thing I did have an objection to was how seriously, brutally, savagely violent it is. Now, there was a couple of walkouts at the screening that we were at.
And the first thing you said to me afterwards was, do you think that was really necessary?
Yeah.
A lot of people have said, I mean, reading, people's reactions to the film, and they say that the film's misogynistic.
Yeah, I had a feeling about that too.
I don't believe the film is misogynistic. I think, and we can't forget that everything in a film is there on purpose. And I think that the violence, the violence in the book is pretty nasty. Okay, you're not seeing it, you're imagining it.
Yeah, I'll give you an example before you go back to to that point, because I think this is an important point. That, for instance, there's a line in the book here that says, this is the scene where quite early in the movie actually, where Lou, Casey Affleck, basically beats Jessica Alba, to death for all intents and purposes. He says, it's 2 lines in the book. I backed her against the wall, slugging, and it was like pounding a pumpkin. Hard, then everything gave way at once. She slumped down, her knees bent under her head hanging limp, and then slowly, an inch at a time. Anyway, that is basically 2 lines in there. I backed her against the wall, slugging, and it was like pounding a pumpkin. Hard, then everything giving away at once. That felt like a 2-minute scene of him pounding, and not pounding, and then you're thinking, oh my god, in the Quentin Tarantino kind of, you're not really seeing the ear being cut off kind of. No, he pounded her face over and over and over again until it gave way.
What made it worse for me was Jessica Alba's reaction to it all.
Right.
It was that was what was hurtful. Yeah. That was what was painful to me. Yeah. It's like,
and not just Jessica Alba, but frankly, all of the women in the movie. Are portrayed as, loving to be slapped. Yeah. Cut, beaten.
I don't see. We know it's wrong. We're repulsed. That's what makes it. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but you can kind of portray that without showing it.
Oh no, you can't. You can't.
Well,
get,
you can because you would have done if it was made in the 50s.
You can't get the full.
I mean, you can talk around a lot of subjects with and well, look, a friend of mine, Laura, said that she felt that the violence was completely necessary in the film because she said, no, you have to show it. It's a cheat not to show it because you have to show the consequences and you have to show what it really means to beat someone to death. That's what it. You have to know what. And I was like, actually, yeah, that's a pretty good. Yeah. I still, it's not for me. I found it really, really brutal and repulsive. And
you're meant to feel that way.
Yes, I know. That's the difficulty, isn't it? Because
we're not sociopaths. Yeah. We're not mental.
Well, yeah. But
only on weekends.
As far as we know.
Michael Winterbottom says he's not making a comment on anything. Right. He's just making an adaptation of this book. That's what he says. Yeah. But you can't help but read something into this.
So when it says the killer inside me, is it really saying that it's the killer inside us? So look, I'm gonna say from pure filmmaking point of view, and for the actors showcase, and for just the general purity and great physicality. Let's say the actual manifestation of the book in film form. I got to give it a really, really high mark. But I have to say, it's effing brutal and. I really, would be wary of recommending this to anybody with, without a strong stomach or at least a strong sort of, constitution. And, but what can I'm still going to give it 8 because I think it's a really, really strong film.
I was going to give it a 7.
Okay, so Michael Winterbottom's The Killer Inside Me, 7.5.